book is titled The Business of Counterterrorism, Public-Private Partnerships in Homeland Security. And I wrote this book with Nathan Bush of Christopher Newport University in Virginia. Nathan and I began writing the book back in 2011, and we wanted to explore a particular trend, and that was the rise of profit-seeking businesses in what was traditionally the government domain, Homeland Security and counterterrorism. We wanted especially to understand how this trend evolved, what it was that businesses were getting out of it, and what it was that government was getting out of it. And we also wanted to sort of view this trend through the lens of the taxpayer. We wanted to know that taxpayers were getting value for their money. And so as we wrote the book over the subsequent 3 years, from 2011 to 2014, we began to kind of unravel the puzzle and discover all that was happening across Homeland Security. And so today, if you look really across that spectrum, from critical infrastructure protection to cybersecurity to disaster recovery, you see heavy business involvement in all of these areas, and they're doing pretty amazing things. On the other hand, this involvement has also introduced brand new challenges that we've never seen before. And so the book, at its heart, really explores how that transformation has taken place and the opportunities and challenges that businesses' involvement in Homeland Security presents today. So one particular issue that we see with businesses being involved in Homeland Security is sort of a dual-faced challenge, that is ethics and legal issues. When businesses perform certain traditionally government roles, they have to jump through the same legal hoops that government agencies have to. And this can feel very foreign for businesses. Meeting certain regulatory requirements, for example, that they have not had to meet in the past, can be challenging. On the other hand, there are certain roles that must remain in the domain of the government. The example that we've brought up repeatedly is that of launching a nuclear missile. It would be highly inappropriate for a business employee to be the one to actually push the button to launch a nuclear missile, because in doing so, that business employee would be taking the full power of the United States government into his or her hands. And because they aren't directly accountable to taxpayers, that, ethically speaking, wouldn't be a prudent move. So there are certain jobs within Homeland Security that have to remain in government control. But that being said, there's a lot of room to grow, and there's a great deal of leverage that we've kind of seen in Homeland Security exercised by businesses. Intelligence analysis, for instance, which is a very sensitive area involving highly classified secrets, is being done now every day across the entire federal intelligence community by private sector analysts. That's not to say that government analysts have gone away, they're still there. But the fact that business analysts are now performing this kind of role is significant. Similarly, if you look at critical infrastructure protection and what it takes to guard some of the most sensitive industries of the United States, there's incredible private sector involvement there, almost by necessity. Something like 85% of all critical infrastructure in the United States, banks, underground data cables, even some bridges and roads, are controlled by businesses, 85%. And so the government, in a sense, doesn't even have a choice but to partner with the private sector. It makes sense for federal, state, and local officials to have good, close working relationships with the owners and operators of this critical infrastructure so that they can develop measures to protect it appropriately. On that same note, we see this incredible trend now in law enforcement. Roughly 1/3 of all quote-unquote law enforcement officers in the United States today actually do not work for governments. They are private guards. And so there's been this sort of privatization of law enforcement that we've seen, especially since 9/11, that's been remarkable. And again, talking about legal and ethical challenges, this introduces a whole range of issues. If a guard wishes to search your bag, say at a sports stadium, that's well within his or her purview. But let's say that guard finds a bag of drugs or something else illegal, say a gun. What sort of right does that guard then have to seize the drugs or seize the gun? Can that guard effect an arrest? Depending upon the jurisdiction, depending upon the nature of the security task being performed, these remain unresolved questions that are being decided in the courts as we speak. It's a huge growth area in terms of the explosion of businesses within the Homeland Security sector. And we talk about sort of in the book how this is actually changing the nature of business in the United States itself. Historically, we're not accustomed to thinking about the private sector performing these traditionally government roles. But our position in the book is, despite the challenges that we face, this is on balance a good thing. It makes sense for businesses to perform certain roles that they are most efficient in. In economics, they call this the law of comparative advantage, and that basically refers to a person, an organization performing what they do best at the lowest cost to society. And so if there's great specialization within business in performing critical infrastructure protection or intelligence analysis or aiding in disaster recovery, then by all means that is what the private sector should be doing. When there's specialization of labor like that, it generates jobs. Folks are satisfied with the performance of certain services, and so those businesses expand and they create even more jobs, and that becomes an engine for economic growth in the United States. So I don't feel that the growth of businesses in the Homeland Security arena is something that we have to be afraid of. Nathan and I take the position that this is an inevitability and it's here right now. We should embrace it, but at the same time, there have to be reasonable regulations and precautions around it within the letter and spirit of the law. And so I think striking that balance between embracing private sector involvement in Homeland Security and ensuring that this growth occurs in sort of a controlled, helpful way is going to be really the core issue for government at all levels moving forward.